Hello, everyone. Hey, good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Front. My name is Mike Phillips. I will be your host. We are going to be covering a live leadership lesson tonight. And what I do on these live leadership lessons, Wednesday evenings, I get with someone that is a prominent leader, somebody that's been recommended, that has some knowledge to share with all of you. So I have that for you tonight. I share new episodes of The Front every Wednesday and Sunday. Make sure you check out the website at leadtheteam.net for free sales training, for motivational content, and for leadership tips. Also, if you would check out the YouTube channel at leadtheteam.tv, make sure you subscribe there. Make sure you hit the bell notification icon, because when you do that, you're going to get notified every time I go live and every time I'm uploading new episodes. So I would love to have you participate and join me. So tonight, I am going to be getting with my friend Glenn Pasch right after this.
Thanks for tuning in to Lead the Teams, The Front.
Yes, that's right. Good evening, everybody. And we are live right over here on my left. I always have to remember to point to my left. This is Glenn Pasch. He's the CEO of PCG Companies. We're going to be visiting with him on the live leadership lessons from The Front tonight. So, Glenn, how you doing this evening? Thanks for joining me, man.
I am doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So if you would, just take a couple minutes for the people that are joining us. Plus, when I always tell people to take a couple minutes, it gives me a chance to click open all the chat rooms and get things rolling. But if you would take just a couple minutes and explain to our audience, talk to our audience about what it is that you do, maybe a little bit about your background, 2 or 3 minutes there, if you would, Glenn.
Sure, no problem. So I'm Glenn Pasch. I'm the CEO of PCG Companies. I am most proud of, I am married going on 17 years this January. I have 2 young boys who are 13 and a half and going to be 12. So that's my most important thing that I do. My background, I am one of 5 boys, New Jersey raised. Been working since I've been 12 years old through paper routes and the shoveling snow and making money, and worked my way through restaurants, and then went to college and off to New York City. I was an actor for about 11 years, which a lot of people don't know. And so I worked in restaurants. A lot of my training and leadership comes from that. And then I ended up probably about 9 years ago, I was doing my own company of training and team building. And my brother Brian started PCG. And so I was helping him with his company. He was helping me with mine. And we ended up deciding that we were going to work together. So it's been a nice compliment to each other, because he really has a lot of great ideas and likes to push the envelope, and I like to build things and build teams. So we've been very successful that way. So in a nutshell, that's who I am. And one of the fun things I get to do is interact with people like Mike and a few others, and we get to chat about how we help our clients, help people. And that is one of my goals every single day, is to help the people around me, offer them whatever I can to help them better themselves, and in turn, I better myself. So there we are.
That's great. I think that just right on the tail end there, where you said when you're helping others grow, it helps you to better yourself and grow as well. I think that's one of the cores. And some people getting into a leadership role miss that sometimes, right? They get into the role and they go, well, now I'm the leader, and they forget that if you bring other people along, it does help you also. So when you said you were an actor, forgive me, you said for how long? I'm gonna hang on that for a minute, man.
Yeah. I think I left. I left college, and that was a long time ago, 1982. So I think I stopped acting in 92 or 93. So yeah, 10 years, okay. 11 years.
And where were you acting at? Were you in like any feature films? Were you acting locally? I was in
New York. Yeah, New York City. So did off Broadway, off Broadway. I did a lot of stand-in work for movies, and so I was the person who, if you were the star, I was the one that they set all the lights on and then said, get out of the way and bring in the star and do that. And extra work. So in some movies, you might, if you really squint, you might be able to see me.
That's cool.
But mostly I did a lot of stage work. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
So then you said you moved from that doing your own. What was your company? You said you were doing your own kind of training, consulting, team building?
Yeah. So I was in the call center industry for a while and built systems and teams. And so when I left that, I just was going around to help companies with process. And somehow it's, full circle. These X number of years later, I still go in to my clients and help them with strategy, not just marketing strategy, which is what the company really focuses on, but I'll go in and help them with their process, how they're set up. So in case, for instance, lead handling or sales, how are they transferring leads? What are they actually doing? And then also building that infrastructure of the team of frontline people. Well, who's coaching them? And then who's coaching the coach? And that's where I find a lot of disconnect in companies is they don't have that structure in place in terms of process, or they may have good training, but then it's that accountability. They forget to have someone inspecting on a constant basis to help performance. And that to me is, when we say leaders or we say managers, I think leaders are the ones who are in there. I like the word coaches more than leaders, because coaches to me are more interactive, where managers have a tendency to sit behind a desk. Like you said earlier,
Sure.
I got the title, now I'm in charge, and I don't really have to work as hard.
Yeah, I agree with you there. What's interesting is as you're sharing that and as you're talking about it, you said you like the word coaches. You're probably the fourth or fifth person that I've had on the show that really goes after the word, as far as a title goes, the word coach. And,
Right.
when it is, I think there is a fine line between leadership and management and coaching and some of these different executive titles, let's call it, right?
Right.
So if there was one thing that just a single thing that you, Glenn Pasch, is known for, so fast forward out of that, and then obviously being the CEO, you have some different duties that you're handling right now.
Right.
But that's what got you into that CEO role, I imagine, was that coaching and the accountability, the inspecting of what people do, right?
Right.
So, if there was one thing, if we surveyed the people in your company, and you probably do this, I know you guys are a good company, so you probably do this. If we surveyed, yeah, take a drink of water for this one. If we surveyed if we surveyed the people in PCG and we said, hey, give us one thing that Glenn Pasch is, what would that one thing be? What would you say that one thing is that you are best known for in either the role you're in now or in the company you're in now?
Funny, we just did worked with a branding company because we're rebranding a little bit some of what we're doing, and so we were talking about that, and it was interesting because I had two of my right hand people with me, and they were talking and say, well, what about Glenn? After I was sort of hemming and hawing because I don't love talking about myself in that way. They ended up saying things that like he cares, he's involved with his people, he's loyal to his people, and he's involved with his people. So I think if anything, that's what they would be saying to me, saying about me, in terms of traits.
So caring, loyal, that you're involved. I think those are all really, really good pieces of leadership. Or what would you say that from your perspective, are those the most important keys to leadership? Or what would you say are some kind of key characteristics that you look for, maybe not in yourself, but especially
Right.
if you're engaging and you're hiring and you're bringing other leaders or other people into your organization that you think, hey, this person could be a leader. What are those key characteristics that you look for, Glenn, in someone that you're looking to for a leadership role?
I think there's a few, because what you said earlier is there's different roles. So if I'm looking for someone to lead a team, right, a smaller team that's inside a bigger structure,
Mm-hmm.
I need them to follow the vision. I need them to be organized. I need them to be consistent. I need them to have empathy for people to understand their position of their struggles, but at the same moment in time, they have to be able to coach them and push them towards the results through ongoing training and involvement. So that would be that. If I'm looking at someone more from a leader of a company, I think that's where, as you move up, the dichotomy of being a leader is, in some ways you feel like you're doing less, but your impact is more because the decisions you're making are broader or have more impactful. So if I was bringing in someone to be my right hand, right? For instance, I'll give you an example. When we brought Dan Moore in to head up VistaDash, and you know Dan very well.
I do.
Some of the traits we were looking at were not just could he lead a team, but did he have vision to take the product further? Could he build on that vision? Could he execute on that vision, meaning plan it out and then inspire the people or direct the people to deliver on that, as well as then build his team to be able to deliver the results he wants. So his skill set was more vision and building versus someone who's just coming in to run, say, a BDC. Theirs is more, well, I have to execute on the framework that's already in here. Now I may tweak it, but that's a whole different consistent skill set. You still need that longer, but I think as you move up the chain, you need that vision. And that's a hard skill to either develop or have for a lot of people in that position.
I'd agree with that. So you're saying you get away from those kind of daily executables, the in the moment, hey, this is the thing that has to, I have to get results on this right now, right? You move from that to the broader, the 20,000 foot view of, okay, well, yes, we need these results. I can't see my hands on camera. We need these results, but what we really need is we need the mushroom. I speak with my hands too. We need them to mushroom up into much larger results and to carry the organization. I get that. I think that's, I think it's a really good way to put it. So let me, this is where I'm going to go off script. So you ready, Glenn? You ready? Hold on. So what would you say are the most important, because you're talking about decisions and different roles. So for example, you said, hey, I've got this person that's leading a team, which I'm okay with, lead the team inside the organization, and then you have somebody that grows up and maybe they're leading multiple departments, and then someone that's leading an entire organization. What would you say are some of the most important decisions that you make on maybe a daily or a monthly basis as a leader within your organization?
I think one of the biggest decisions is staying in my lane, because sometimes leaders have a tendency to want to get too involved, and almost by mistake and not intentional, you're elbowing people out of the way, and it can give them the wrong impression that you don't trust them or you don't believe that they can do it. And you're looking at it, well, I'm just here to try and help, my opinion. But you forget sometimes, as much as we're a small company and as much as I want to think, hey, we're all on the same level, it never happens, because you're still the person who signs the paycheck. So sure, come on in, and they'll bite their tongue. Now, I'm hoping that I've built people up who will challenge that. But to your point is, some of my biggest decisions is, one of the biggest ones is, where are we moving, the partnerships that we have to do with the company, how do we grow our business, how do we maintain our business, and making those decisions in more of a structural or our product development or our marketing of what we're doing or our partnerships, versus really involved in the granular of our clients. I know what our clients are getting. I know how our people are working, but I'm not involved in the day-to-day anymore of being on every client startup call, or did we do this or did we do that? That's no longer there, because I've built the structure of people underneath me to execute on that. So we'll have meetings to get an update on that. I'm more worried about, well, how can I make a partnership with this company, because then that will be able to open up a whole nother channel of revenue for us, versus did we get another sale in today, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does make sense. So when you are going through that, because I've experienced that myself in organizations. Years ago as a hockey coach, and if you've ever coached anyone who's coached youth sports, there's a lot of analogies that come into play in business compared to sports. And you're trying to coach that 8, 9, or 10-year-old, and for me, it was hockey, right? No, look, here's how you hold your stick. And instead of trying to coach them through it, you end up just grabbing the stick and saying, no, do it like this, right?
Right.
So I get that. So when you're coaching
But
people,
to your point, I want to touch on that for a
yeah,
moment. I actually don't think that's necessarily a bad thing,
sure,
because the way we teach youth sports or we teach our children, I always say that for some reason, from the time we were born till, let's say, we leave high school, there was a way that we were educated. We were shown how to do things. So to your point, here's how you hold the stick. Here's the angle. I taught my children, my son coached his 9-year-old baseball team. And it was, here's how you hold the ball. Here's how you pitch. Because if you tell them, the picture in their head's different than the one in yours. And then you get frustrated.
right,
So that's how we were educated all through school. You went up to the board. They showed you how to do it. Somehow when we became an adult, we get into the business world, and there's a lot more telling than showing, and then there's frustration because of the disconnect, right? So I think that we try to work at least in our company, when we're working with someone or training someone, we want to show them what we do so they see it. We watch them. Then there's no misunderstanding, right? And I think that's what happens a lot of times when people are leaders who are in a leadership position. They do a lot more talking and telling and assuming that everyone's going to just magically understand what they're doing. And then there's that frustration when the results aren't there. And you hear a lot of things like, well, I told you. What did I tell you?
Oh, yeah.
Not what did I show you, right? Different.
Right, absolutely. Well, and then I think you said early on in the conversation, one of the big keys to sustaining success is then the accountability piece. So it's one thing, like you're saying, okay, you tell them, you show them, you let them do it, and then after you're letting them do it, I think the fault of people in leadership or management or whatever that title may be is they end up backing off. They go, oh, Glenn, I showed Glenn how to do that. He gets it, man. And then they never come back and check, right?
Right.
That's that key component.
Yeah, and so to me, there always has to be a point as a leader, right? And I'll use myself for an example because I make these mistakes all the time. So when I'm standing in front of clients and talking, or even when I'm speaking about this to hundreds of people, I always say, listen, I'm just as guilty as this. So I had a situation where, because of my travel schedule or because I was dealing with other things, I just assumed that my team was doing it because it looked like they were doing a good job. Problem is that there were certain issues that just weren't getting closure. And so then when I came in one day and I said, well, why isn't this done? They were saying, well, we were waiting for you to ask us about it. Now, just a miscommunication. So I stopped doing the accountability at the level or the timing that I had set for myself because I just assumed, well, my team's really good, they'll take care of it. So to your point, really great leaders never stop inspecting. They don't need to inspect every day, but I'll bet you it's once a month I'm checking it, and it never stops. You could work for me for 10 years, but every month we have a meeting. And we hope that the meeting's going to go really, really quickly because you know what I'm looking for. Results are there, but it never stops because as soon as and so going back to one thing you said was what was one of the decisions or one of the lessons that I learned a long time ago was whatever I think is important and focus on, everybody is. So I have to really make sure that what my focus is aligns with the business. And then more importantly, know that if I don't pay attention to something, they're not going to pay attention to it. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden something falls by the wayside.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said about that too. And as I've been talking to people, especially in this last couple of years, where it's the Tony Robbins saying, but it's amplified, right? Where focus goes, energy flows. But it's amplified when you're at the helm. You focus on something and it ripples out and ripples out and ripples out. And so I get that. So let me shift gears a little bit on you here. when we're talking and you're saying, okay, look, you were comparing it to youth baseball, and you say, look, here's how you hold the ball, here's how you do this, and then you also were saying earlier, you're a process guy. Like, what's the process in the BDC, and how do I build this team, and what are the processes? So there are definitive checklists and pillars and checkpoints along the way. Mm-hmm. Or, for every different organization, they're going to have different terminologies for it. How do you guys? Because to me, I've followed your organization. You and I have been connected on social media for a number of years, I think now, and sometimes when a social media platform comes up, we still reconnect, right? Oh, hey, I got to follow that guy. How do you, when there are a lot of pieces that have to be linear, how do you encourage in your organization? Because I feel like you guys are an innovative, cutting edge, mm-hmm. Doing digital marketing in the automotive space and coaching people to be better than they are currently. How do you encourage creative thinking with your staff within your organization to get away from the linear?
Well, I think that's part of my job as a leader, is to come in and break things every once in a while. I encourage people to be creative. I want them to push the envelope. But again, when you have a process and you're handling multiple things, there is always that fear that if I go too far out, I might get yelled at, or what if it fails? And no matter how much you say that, don't worry, you're not going to get fired if as Dan and I use similar terminology of fall forward, right? If you're going to fall forward, don't fall backwards, because at least you're moving forward and you're trying. But I think it's up to me and up to anyone who's running a company to just challenge your team at least maybe twice a year. So we did this probably about 4 months ago. I came into a meeting and I said, okay, if we could not do what our process says in terms of how we look at a website or how we create content, what if I told you we could not create any content that we currently do in our process? We couldn't do that anymore. How would we deliver results? How would we increase their traffic to their website? We couldn't do anything that we currently did. Nothing. What would we do? And everybody's face went, oh my God, what? But exactly, there it was. But it challenged people to go, well, what if we tried this? What if we tried that? What if we tried that? Because I think it's very easy to fall in a pattern.
Sure.
And in digital marketing, we always forget we're playing in Google sandbox and we're chasing Google or Bing or whatever. And when they change something, you better be paying attention because it could impact you. But even in the creative or even your strategy, it's really trying to constantly say, well, what if? And my team hates me because every morning I have about almost an hour commute each way, or 45 minutes when I'm going to the office. I live on the other side of the state. And so I always come into meetings and saying, I was listening to a podcast and they're going, oh, good Lord, what's this going to be? But I'm constantly throwing ideas out at them to say, well, what if we thought about this? I don't come in and say, oh, we're changing. I'm just throwing ideas out to say, well, what if we thought about this? Or, I saw this. Or could we do this? And I'm trying to encourage the team also to look outside of automotive for inspiration, because if we're just going to copy our competitors, then we still all look the same. So we're always looking at strategies outside of, and we have probably about 20%, 15 to 20% of our client base is non-automotive, local to us. So we talked about it earlier. You're working with an independent dealer, gives you some more flexibility than maybe a franchise dealer. So that's what we're always trying to push. And I think you have to also put people on the spot and give them a project to say, you need to come back, right? If we send someone to a conference, we make them stand in front of the company and present, what did you see? What did you like? What was different? Or what did someone say is the right thing to do that we're doing? So we go, okay, we're in the right ballpark.
Yeah, we always do that when we set. I think that's really valuable for anybody who's watching. If they're, a lot of people just go to conferences because they're like, oh yeah, I get to get out of the office and go to the conference. We're talking about that before. Like, if you want to go to a conference, there's a conference every weekend for something, even in any industry.
Not every day almost now, right?
The key is when somebody's coming back from a conference, for us too, we do the same thing. We say, look, when you're going, you need to read back over your notes on the way back and figure out what are your top 3 takeaways, because you're going to share them with everybody. And so I think
the other thing is, I think it's the other thing, or the other side of that is, you should have a preparatory meeting before you send somebody there. Sit down for a moment and look at the agenda and say, what are we looking to accomplish? Why am I sending you to this conference? Well, we need to learn about it. It could be, if we're going to say NADA, we want to look at, we need a new CRM. Okay, well then who are the ones that we want to look at? We're going to go do some preparatory work. If I'm going to a conference and it's a digital conference and there's, as you said, there's tons of content there. Well, what am I trying to learn? Who do I want to go see? If you plan that out ahead of time, you may not have to go see 20 people, but if I go find these 3 people, that's good. And then, like you said, when you come back, what did you learn? How can we apply it? How can we utilize this? Then the value of the conference is, then I actually think dealers would send more people to conferences, because if they had an agenda ahead of time and they came back and reported, they would see the value, versus, to your point, is, well, why should I send you? It just sounds like you're going out of the office for a couple of days on a vacation.
Right. And anyone who's ever attended a conference or a 20 group, if you've gone with that focus, that laser-like focus to learn something, it is not a vacation.
Right. No.
It's a great learning experience. Yeah.
It is.
So let me ask you, in addition to, while we're kind of on that learning subject, what would you say, Glenn, what would you recommend? Are there maybe 1 or 2 or 3 resources that you could recommend, maybe ones that you use for people that watch this program, that would help to develop them as a up-and-coming leader?
Great. There are, let me see, there was a few books in my life that really had a big impact on me. One was a book. It's an older one, but it was phenomenal. It was by a gentleman named Francis Fournies, Fournies. It's an old book. It would say, why don't your employees do what you want them to do and what you can do about it, or something along those lines. Okay. And it really taught you how to look at results of someone and not pass judgment and say, well, if they're not doing it, there has to be a reason why. It's either they don't understand what they want to do or what they're supposed to do. It's either they weren't trained on it or no one's giving them feedback. It's very simple. So that book was a really good one. I'm constantly listening to specific people, as I find them on sort of the some of the podcasts that are out there. I'll listen to their leadership. I like people who are really from different industries, who lead teams. It was an interesting one. I was listening to Lewis Howes' School of Greatness podcast, and the woman who is one of the owners of WeWork the other day. I thought some of her, how she builds her companies and how she frames looking and treating her employees, I thought that's really good. And I like reading biographies about people who built companies as well, because we tend to look at their success of saying, so for instance, I read Richard Branson's biography at one time, and everyone looks at him going, look at everything he had. But when you see the failures that he had or the struggles that he had, when you're going through it, you just think everything's horrible, but you never know where you're going to end up. So I think the more that you can, I personally just say, it doesn't matter who you read or who you listen to, but listen. Go out, and if you have 10 minutes a day or you have 15 minutes a day, go out there or ask people that you know, because many of you won't know me and you'll say, well, who's he to recommend? But if you have someone close to you that's a leader, you work for someone that you admire, ask them what they read. Ask them, take them to lunch and pick their brain, not about the day-to-day of the office, but just talk to them as what is just the questions that you're asking me? What were some of the things you learned? What was your biggest struggle? What was your biggest failure? I think interviewing people that you know, you'll be surprised how many similarities we all have in terms of we've all failed, or we should be failing. And if we're not failing, then we're not trying hard enough. But I think the more that you can go ask people that you look up to or are surrounded by, I think that's where you start finding things that you can implement on a day-to-day basis, put in a new thing in your process for learning that will help you build your skills, and learn also that it just takes time, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, that's one of the currently, in our current environment, one of the things that we fool ourselves on, I think often is, I was talking to my son about this, my oldest son who just turned 18, and we're having a conversation when you're talking about biographies, because when you read that, it gives you some of the realness of it. It's not just, you know, we see the beginning, the Richard Branson, and then you see the end, the huge company and Virgin and all of the other tentacles that have been created. You miss all of that along the way. My son is a fan of Gary Vee, and it's like, okay, well, the problem is you miss a lot of the journey because of YouTube, because of some of these other entities. You see the beginning of what the person was, and then all of a sudden you see what they are today. But there's a whole lot more depth to that journey than just the surface that you know, they're looking at it right now. I think that's, for me personally, I think that's one of those generational things that we're going to end up having to overcome, because everybody sees that end result.
Well, it's the good and the bad about social media and connecting. So you and I were talking about it earlier. You know, we've connected on social media, and that's phenomenal. But there are people who want to just show the best part of their life, and I don't want to be seen. You know, it's a tough one. People don't want to complain or say it's tough, because then everyone's going, you're complaining, or it's tough, be quiet. But anything that we've ever done, you know, it takes time. Learning to walk as a child took time. Learning how to run took time. Learning how to do math takes time. And so I think those of us who have children, I see it now. You mark your age by seeing your kids, but you also see how hard it is we just take it for granted now that we can pick things up, but you're watching them learn math. My 6th grader learning math, and every day it's 2 steps back. Okay, I got it. And then 2 steps. Now he's not going as far back, but it's that back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. We just don't allow that of ourselves as leaders, because we're always supposed to have better growth, better this, everything's great. God forbid you go to a conference and said, man, I had a horrible quarter. I had a horrible 6 months, man. It's just been brutal. Everyone's, it always has to be positive. And then all of a sudden you turn around and you go, what happened to that company? It went out of business. Everything sounded so good.
Everything looked great.
It looked great online. But I think that's from a leader, and I think that's also one of the tough things of a balance for a team. As me as a CEO, is how much do you share with your company? I share a lot, but then I get feedback was, whoa, that's too much. Now I'm scared, you know, or you don't share enough. And it's that, how do you keep them involved but not worry them? Like, that stress should be mine at 2 o'clock in the morning, waking up going, oh God, not theirs. They should be able to come in and go, hey, we got a good job. It's still going, whatever. I'll need some of them to say, hey, listen, this is going to be bumpy, or don't get freaked out if a client leaves, where they're thinking it's the end of the world. But that's what a leader has to do. And ultimately, you know, Gary Vee says it, a lot of other people, but I truly believe it. If everything that happens bad in the company is my fault, it's mine. Somewhere along the line, it's my fault that I didn't communicate it to them, train them enough, hold them accountable enough, or I held on to them too long. Right? That's my decision.
That's a hard one.
Right? It's a hard one, because, you know, you don't want to just let people go, right? You want to be able to, you know, not emotional knee-jerk reactions, but there are some times where you grow apart. But I think ultimately that's the tough thing. But as a leader, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you're the one. There's no one behind you. There's no one behind me to go, it's his fault, right? It's mine. So that, I think, ultimately is the key to a leader at that level. Are you willing to take the responsibility and say it's me, or are you always doing that thing? Then I don't think you should be in that position as the ultimate leader.
No, I absolutely, I agree with you. And I think on that, man, I think I'm going to take us out. We're right about the 30-minute mark, if that's cool, unless you have any other final thoughts for tonight.
No,
We're
I
going to
just
have to get
want
together
to
and talk
thank
about
you.
this again.
Yeah, no, I just want to, first, again, I want to thank you for doing this, because I think that, just having this out there and having other people be able to sit here and ask questions and talk, because so many of us who are connected online are at that, either that same level in our companies, meaning we're either at the top or we're near the bottom, or even we're starting up, and to be able to break down the barriers of what's going on and how hard it is, or struggles, and it's not all just perfect, but there are some really great things. And you know what? As my wife said to me one time when I started with Brian, she said, what I'm so happy is that you're using more of your brain than you were before. Meaning, like, even though it's struggles and you're stressed out, you're so happy. Yeah. Like, you're really, really happy. And so you're on the right path. But again, I want to thank you for this, because you doing this is helping a lot of people, and it's going to just continue to grow. And you should be very proud of yourself for this.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. And that's the goal, just make an impact and help other people grow. And that, one of the things for me, I think part of I love the broadcasting part, but also is, sometimes we miss, we miss somebody in another vertical, somebody that's a CEO, to be able to ask some of these questions. And who knows, someone may say, that Glenn Pasch guy, and they want to be able to reach out to you, and that creates another connection. So, that's what lights me up. It gets fired me up about this. So thank you so much for the compliment. What's the best way that people should reach out and communicate with you if they wanted to reach out to you, Glenn?
Great. So if on social, business-wise, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, social, just Glenn Pasch. And then if you want to reach out to me at the company, you can call Glenn, Glenn, at PCG Companies, IES companies.com. I'm available. Let's chat. Let me help you any way I can.
That's awesome. And he is available. I'll tell anybody out there that's talking, because you and I have exchanged emails. We've exchanged Facebook messages. That says a lot too. Very respectful person, and always responsive, which I think is awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and take us out. Thank you so much again, Glenn. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have a great night. Thanks.
Yeah. So for everybody that took the time to tune in and join us for this live leadership lesson, absolutely awesome, man. I just, for me, as I've said before, my ulterior motive, I sit here and I learn and I listen, and it just fires me up. It brings a grin to my face to be able to listen to some of these amazing people and their experiences, and answer questions that, like, for me, I wanted the answer to when I was coming up in business. So I think that's absolutely awesome. So I thank Glenn so much for being with me tonight on Live Leadership Lessons from the Front. As a reminder to everybody out there, please do me a favor, and I always forget this at the beginning. Do me a favor, smash the like button, hit the share button, because now you've had the chance to see the whole thing. You know how good it is. So share the video out, share it on your social media. I broadcast this live from the Front Facebook page, as well as my YouTube channel, which is leadtheteam.tv. I would love for you to subscribe and follow along there. We bring a new live leadership lesson each Wednesday at 7:05 p.m. Eastern. And then I'm posting more of a training style podcast of the Front, so you can keep people out front. You can be in front. You can bring your team out front with you. That's the goal of it. And I post those up on Sundays. So I will tell you what, for everybody who joined live, or if you're watching the recorded version, thank you so much. I really, truly appreciate you. Share this with somebody that needs it, that wants to grow. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Until we speak next, I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. We'll talk to you soon, everybody.